My brother's words echoed through the house as I stood frozen in the hallway, clutching a letter that would change everything. "You're nothing but a waste of space," he spat, his voice dripping with the same contempt I'd known my entire life. 3 days later, I watched from my kitchen window as FBI agents swarmed our family property, leading him away in handcuffs. The brother who thought he was untouchable had finally been caught, and the evidence that put him there came from the person he'd underestimated most. Me. The morning started like any other in our small Tennessee town. I was brewing coffee in my apartment when my phone lit up with a notification. Another venomous text from my brother, Marcus. "Dad's asking why you're not helping with the family business. I told him not to bother. You've never contributed anything worthwhile anyway." I set my phone face down on the counter, letting the familiar sting wash over me. At 29, I was the family disappointment, according to Marcus, the accountant with a modest apartment, instead of following him into the lucrative family real estate development business. What they called playing it safe, I called ethical choices. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The tension with my brother had been building for years, but things escalated dramatically 6 months ago, when our father had a minor heart attack. While I drove 3 hours from Nashville to be at the hospital, Marcus was already there, positioning himself as the devoted son. He'd been working alongside Dad for years in the family business, Turner Development Group, while I had chosen a different path. "Nice of you to finally show up," Marcus sneered when I arrived at the hospital, despite the fact I'd left work immediately after getting the call. "Some of us have been here making actual decisions while you've been, counting other people's money?" I bit back a response and focused on Dad, who was thankfully going to recover fully. The doctors recommended rest and reduced stress. Dad reluctantly agreed to step back from daily operations for a few months, leaving Marcus effectively in charge. That night, in the hospital cafeteria, Marcus cornered me. "Since you're so keen on numbers, let me give you some. Dad's medical bills aren't cheap. The business needs all hands on deck, and you're the only Turner not pulling your weight. I have my own career, Marcus. I can help financially, but nothing." He cut me off. "Your cute little accounting job isn't what the family needs. We need someone who understands real business, not just spreadsheets." I stood my ground. "I'm not coming to work for you, if that's what you're asking." His face hardened. "I wasn't asking. But fine, keep hiding in your safe little bubble. Just know you're letting Dad down. Again." As Dad recovered, I started noticing troubling patterns. Turner Development had suddenly accelerated several projects, breaking ground on properties that had been tied up in zoning disputes for years. When I asked questions during Sunday dinners, Marcus would smoothly change the subject or explain it away as finally cutting through the red tape. "You wouldn't understand the complexities," he'd say, patting my shoulder condescendingly in front of our parents. "Not everyone has the stomach for real business." My concerns deepened when I ran into Ellie Johnson at the grocery store. She'd been our family's bookkeeper for 20 years before abruptly retiring 3 months ago. "Nathan," she said, gripping my arm with surprising strength for a woman in her 60s. Her eyes darted around nervously. "How are you holding up with everything?" "I'm fine, Ellie. How's retirement treating you?" She lowered her voice. "It wasn't exactly my choice. Your brother, he's making changes. Bringing in his own people." She hesitated. "Be careful, Nathan. There are things happening that don't add up." Before I could ask more, she spotted someone over my shoulder and quickly excused herself, leaving me standing in the cereal aisle with a growing sense of unease. That night, I pulled up the public records for Turner Development's recent projects. On the surface, everything looked legitimate, but something felt off. 3 major developments had cleared permitting processes in record time, despite environmental concerns that had stalled them for years. I called my friend Samantha, who worked in the county clerk's office. "Sam, have you noticed anything unusual with Turner Development applications lately?" There was a pause. "Nathan, I shouldn't be telling you this, but there's been talk. Your brother has been very persuasive with certain officials. Expensive gifts, private meetings. Nothing anyone can prove, but..." "Thanks, Sam. I appreciate the heads up." The next day, I drove past one of our development sites, a former wetland area that had been controversial due to wildlife concerns. Construction was moving at a frenetic pace. Workers swarmed over the property like ants, clearly on an accelerated timeline. I parked and approached the site manager, Carlos, who'd known me since I was a kid. "Nathan Turner! Man, haven't seen you around the family business in ages. Just checking things out. Seems like you guys are moving fast here." Carlos glanced around before leaning in. "Your brother wants this done yesterday. Between us, we're skipping some steps that make me nervous. Environmental assessments that should take weeks are being signed off overnight." "That doesn't sound legal, Carlos." He shrugged uncomfortably. "Above my pay grade, kid. But if I were you, I'd ask some questions." When I tried to talk to Dad about my concerns, Marcus always seemed to be there, interrupting or dismissing me. "Nathan's always been the worrier," he'd say, laughing as if I were still the anxious 10-year-old afraid of the dark. "Leave the business to those who understand it, little brother." The breaking point came during a family dinner, celebrating Dad's full recovery. Marcus announced a massive new development project, a luxury resort on protected forest land that our family had been trying to develop for decades. "How did you get approval?" I asked, unable to hide my surprise. "That land has been tied up in environmental protection since before we were born." Marcus smirked. "Let's just say I have better relationships with the zoning board than Dad ever did. Sometimes all it takes is knowing which palms to grease." The table went silent. Dad looked uncomfortable, while Mom busied herself refilling wine glasses. "You're openly admitting to bribery at the dinner table?" I asked incredulously. Marcus rolled his eyes. "God, you're such a Boy Scout. This is how real business works, Nathan. This is why you'll never build anything meaningful with your life. While you're counting beans in your cubicle, I'm creating legacies." He raised his glass. "To finally breaking ground next week." Everyone reluctantly clinked glasses, except me. Marcus noticed and his eyes narrowed. "Problem, little brother?" "Several, actually." "What you're describing is corruption, Marcus. It's illegal." "Enough," Dad interjected, looking tired. "Nathan, your brother has achieved something remarkable here. Can't you just be supportive for once?" The familiar sting of being the family disappointment burned through me. I looked around the table at my family, all willing to look the other way as long as the money kept flowing. "I need some air," I muttered, pushing away from the table. Marcus followed me onto the porch. "You know, Nathan, I've been patient with you. I've tolerated your holier-than-thou attitude, your pathetic little accounting job, your constant questioning of my methods." "Your illegal methods," I corrected. His hand shot out, gripping my arm painfully. "Listen carefully. You are nothing but a waste of space in this family. The only reason you're still invited to these dinners is because Mom insists. But if you get in the way of this project, I will make sure everyone sees exactly how worthless you really are." I pulled my arm away. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. You have no idea what I'm capable of." The next morning, I made a decision. If my family wouldn't listen, maybe someone else would. I started gathering information. Records of the accelerated permits, notes from conversations with concerned employees, patterns of suspicious payments from company accounts. I reached out to Ellie, the former bookkeeper, who reluctantly agreed to meet me at a coffee shop 2 towns over. "I was waiting for someone to notice," she said, sliding a flash drive across the table. Marcus fired me when I questioned some unusual transfers. Large sums moving through shell companies, then ending up in the personal accounts of 3 zoning commissioners. "Why didn't you go to the authorities?" I asked. She looked down. "Your father gave me my start when no one else would hire a single mother. I couldn't bear to be the one to bring down his company. But this has gone too far." She tapped the flash drive. "The evidence is all there, Nathan. What you do with it is up to you." For days, I agonized over my next move. Going against my family, especially my brother, would mean burning bridges that might never be rebuilt. But staying silent made me complicit in corruption that was hurting my community. The decision was made for me when I received a worried call from Carlos, the site manager. "Nathan, they're breaking ground on the forest resort tomorrow. No environmental impact study, no proper permits. Marcus says it's all handled, but this feels wrong. We're talking about protected land." That night, I compiled everything I had: financial records, witness statements, photographs of the protected land already being cleared, and drafted an email to the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. As I hovered over the send button, my phone rang. It was Marcus. "I know what you're doing," he said without preamble, his voice ice cold. My blood froze. "What are you talking about?" "Ellie told me about your little meeting. Did you really think she'd choose you over the family that supported her for decades? You're pathetic, Nathan." "Marcus, what you're doing is wrong. People will get hurt," he laughed. "The only person getting hurt will be you. I've already told Dad you're trying to sabotage the company out of jealousy. Guess who he believes? By this time tomorrow, you won't have a family left." Is that supposed to scare me? It should. Remember that audit your accounting firm handled for Westridge Properties last year? The one that mysteriously found no irregularities despite their obvious tax fraud? My stomach dropped. I had discovered discrepancies in that audit, but my supervisor had overruled me, forcing me to sign off on the clean report. "I have proof you knowingly signed a fraudulent audit, little brother. One call from me, and your precious accounting career is over. Your choice: back off or lose everything." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The line went dead. I sat in my apartment, staring at my computer screen, Marcus's threat ringing in my ears. He'd found my pressure point and pressed hard. My career, my reputation, everything I'd built independently from my family, hung in the balance. But as the initial shock faded, something else replaced it: clarity and determination. My entire life, Marcus had made me feel small, insignificant, a waste of space. He'd twisted every family gathering, every achievement of mine into another opportunity to assert his dominance. And now he was threatening to destroy me professionally because I wouldn't look the other way while he broke the law. I thought about the protected forest that would be bulldozed tomorrow, the wetlands already being filled in, the officials whose integrity had been compromised by my brother's bribes, the community that would bear the consequences of his corruption. With a deep breath, I clicked send on the email to the FBI. Then I did something Marcus would never expect. I called him back. "I've reconsidered," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "You're right. It's not worth throwing away my career or my family." "Smart decision," Marcus replied, the smugness evident in his voice. "I knew you'd see reason. I'd like to come see the groundbreaking tomorrow, show my support." A pause. "Really? That's unexpected. Family first, right? That's what you've always said." Marcus laughed. Well, maybe there's hope for you yet. Be there at 9 a.m. And Nathan, bring that flash drive Ellie gave you." The next morning dawned bright and clear. I drove to the forest site, where a small crowd had gathered: local officials, business partners, and my parents, all there to witness the Turner Development Group's latest triumph. Marcus stood on a temporary platform, looking every inch the successful businessman in his tailored suit. His smile faltered slightly when he saw me approach. "You came," he said, eyeing me suspiciously. I handed him a flash drive. As requested, he pocketed it quickly. "Good. Now try to look supportive for once. The photographer from the Business Journal is here." As Marcus took his position for the ceremonial groundbreaking, I noticed several unmarked vehicles pulling up at the edge of the clearing. Men and women in dark jackets emerged, moving purposefully toward our gathering. My brother was mid-speech, shovel in hand. "Today marks a new chapter for our community," he was saying. "Where others saw obstacles, we saw opportunity." "Where others?" Marcus Turner. A woman in a dark suit stepped forward, flanked by agents. She held up a badge. "FBI. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of bribery, wire fraud, and environmental violations." The crowd gasped. Marcus's face contorted with rage as his eyes found mine in the audience. "You," he hissed, dropping the shovel. "What did you do?" I met his gaze steadily as the agents approached him. I stopped being a waste of space. My mother rushed to my side, gripping my arm. "Nathan, what's happening? Did you know about this?" Before I could answer, one of the FBI agents called out, We also have warrants to search Turner Development offices and the residence of Marcus Turner. Please cooperate fully." As the agents handcuffed my brother, his mask of confidence crumbled. "This is a mistake," he shouted. "I'm being set up. Nathan, tell them!" But it was too late for his manipulations. The flash drive I'd given Marcus was a decoy. The real evidence, financial records, emails, recorded conversations where he openly discussed bribing officials, had been in the FBI's hands since last night. Dad approached me, his face ashen. "Did you do this to your own brother?" "I did what was right," I replied quietly. "The question is, why didn't you?" As Marcus was led away, he locked eyes with me one last time. Gone was the arrogance, the condescension, the absolute certainty of his superiority. For the first time in our lives, he looked at me with something new: fear. The crowd dispersed quickly, stunned by the dramatic turn of events. My parents left without speaking to me, following the agents who were heading to our family home with their search warrant. I stood alone at the edge of the forest that would now be spared. A text message lit up my phone from an unknown number. "This is Special Agent Diana Chen. We'd like to speak with you about your cooperation in this ongoing investigation. Your information was invaluable." As I walked back to my car, I realized something profound had shifted. For years, I'd allowed Marcus to define my worth, to make me feel small in my own family. But standing up against his corruption hadn't just saved a forest. It had finally freed me from his shadow. The waste of space had become the one person strong enough to stand for something bigger than family loyalty. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly valuable. The next 24 hours passed in a blur. News of Marcus's arrest spread through our small town like wildfire. By evening, it was the lead story on local stations, complete with footage of my brother being escorted into the FBI field office, his face partially hidden behind his suit jacket. I watched from my apartment, a strange hollowness in my chest. This wasn't celebration or vindication, just the quiet aftermath of doing what was necessary. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends, colleagues, even distant relatives suddenly eager to reconnect with the Turner who hadn't been arrested. I ignored them all, except for one call from Special Agent Chen. "We need you to come in tomorrow morning," she said, her voice professional but kind. "Your brother is claiming you fabricated evidence to frame him out of jealousy. We need your formal statement." "I'll be there," I promised. After hanging up, I finally checked my voicemail. 6 messages from my mother, each progressively more distraught. 2 from my father, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Nathan, it's Dad. Call me back. We need to talk about what you've done. What I'd done. Not what Marcus had done. What I'd done. Even now, I was the problem." The last message was from my cousin Vanessa, the only family member who'd maintained a relationship with me despite Marcus's attempts to isolate me. "Nathan, I'm on your side. Always have been. Call me when you're ready. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you." I closed my eyes, letting her words wash over me. One person who understood. It was enough for tonight. Morning arrived with an unexpected knock at my door. I opened it to find my father standing there, looking aged beyond his 60 years. The confident businessman was gone, replaced by a haunted, uncertain man I barely recognized. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside, saying nothing as he entered and surveyed my modest apartment. "They searched the house yesterday," he finally said, settling heavily onto my couch. "And the office. They took computers, files, phones, everything." He looked up at me. "Your mother is devastated." "I'm sorry for her pain," I said carefully, "but not for what I did." Dad rubbed his face with both hands. "Why didn't you come to me first, Nathan, before going to the authorities?" I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Would you have listened, really listened? Marcus had you convinced I was just jealous of his success? That I was trying to undermine him because I couldn't measure up? That's not true, isn't it? 2 nights ago at dinner, I raised concerns about illegal activity, and you told me to be more supportive. Every time I tried to talk to you about the business these past months, you deferred to Marcus. You chose his version of reality over and over again. Dad fell silent, staring at the floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. Did you know they're investigating me too? 30 years building this company, and now I might lose everything. My reputation, my freedom, gone. I sat across from him. Were you involved in the bribes, Dad? He shook his head slowly. Not directly, no. But I suspected something wasn't right. The permits came too easily. The obstacles disappeared too conveniently. I didn't want to know the details. Willful ignorance is still a choice, I said. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Your brother says you planted evidence, that this is your revenge for being passed over in the company. And you believe him? Dad looked at me directly for the first time. I don't know what to believe anymore. The admission hung in the air between us, the first honest thing he'd said to me in years. Not an accusation, not a dismissal, just uncertainty. I'm due at the FBI office in an hour, I said, standing. I should get ready. Dad nodded and rose slowly. At the door, he paused. Nathan, regardless of how this plays out, you're still my son. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even acceptance of what I'd done. But it was something, a crack in the wall that had stood between us for so long. I know, Dad. That's why this was so hard. After he left, I straightened my tie and grabbed my keys, mentally preparing for the day ahead. As an accountant, I understood evidence, documentation, the power of numbers to tell a story. Today, my story would finally be heard. The FBI field office was imposing all glass and steel and security checkpoints. Agent Chen met me in the lobby, professional in her dark suit but with kind eyes that put me slightly at ease. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Turner. We have a lot to discuss. She led me to a conference room where 2 other agents waited. For the next 4 hours, I walked them through everything. The suspicious permits, the shell companies, the conversations with employees who'd been silenced or fired. I provided context for each piece of evidence I'd submitted, explaining the complex financial maneuvers Marcus had used to hide the bribes. Your brother is claiming you fabricated documents, one of the agents said, that you accessed company systems without authorization to plant evidence. I nodded. I expected that. But the bank transfers can be verified independently, and there are at least 3 zoning officials who received bribes. They might be willing to cooperate to save themselves. One already has, Agent Chen confirmed. Commissioner Wilson called us this morning, looking to make a deal. As our meeting concluded, Chen walked me out. In the hallway, she stopped, speaking quietly. Off the record, Mr. Turner, what you did took courage. Turning in family is never easy. It wasn't about family, I replied. It was about right and wrong. She smiled slightly. In my experience, it's always about family. Otherwise, the choice wouldn't be so painful. As I drove home, her words echoed in my mind. She was right. If Marcus had been just another corrupt businessman, the decision would have been straightforward. It was the shared history, the blood connection, the family dinners and childhood memories that made this path so difficult. I was so lost in thought that I almost missed the news van parked outside my apartment building. A reporter I recognized from the local station was interviewing my neighbors. I quickly turned around, not ready to become part of the story I'd set in motion. Instead, I drove to Vanessa's house on the other side of town. My cousin answered the door immediately, pulling me into a fierce hug. "About time you showed up," she said, ushering me inside. "I've been fielding calls from every Turner relative with a phone, all wanting to know what the hell is going on." "What are you telling them?" I asked, sinking into her comfortable couch. "That Marcus finally messed with the wrong person. You." She handed me a cup of coffee. "Seriously, Nathan, I've watched him belittle you for years while everyone just let it happen. Part of me is glad you finally stood up to him." "I didn't do it to stand up to Marcus," I said. "I did it because what he was doing was wrong." "Can't it be both?" Vanessa sat beside me. "Look, I know you, Nathan. You've always been the ethical one, the one who follows the rules. But you've also always let Marcus walk all over you. Maybe this time, doing the right thing and standing up for yourself happened to be the same thing." I considered her words. Maybe. But now the whole family thinks I'm a traitor. "Not the whole family," she corrected. I'm on your side. And others will come around when they learn the truth. What if they don't? What if they never forgive me? Vanessa's expression hardened. Then they don't deserve you, Nathan. Families should hold each other accountable, not cover up crimes. I stayed at Vanessa's that night, grateful for her spare bedroom and the absence of news vans. In the morning, I woke to multiple texts from Agent Chen. Marcus Turner was formally charged this morning. 3 zoning officials also in custody. Press conference at 2 p.m. Your name will not be mentioned as the source, but be prepared for speculation. The second text was more personal. Your father came in voluntarily with his lawyer, cooperating fully. Seems genuinely shocked by extent of son's actions. I felt a complicated relief. Dad was cooperating. Maybe he really hadn't known the details of Marcus's corruption. Or maybe he was just saving himself now that the truth was exposed. Either way, I was grateful he wasn't fighting the investigation. Vanessa drove me back to my apartment, taking a circuitous route to avoid any lingering media. You should stay with me until this dies down, she offered. I can't hide forever, I replied. Besides, I need to go back to work on Monday. Life goes on. She frowned. At least think about changing your phone number. The way Aunt Catherine was talking yesterday, you'll be getting some nasty calls from relatives. Let them call, I said with more confidence than I felt. I've got nothing to be ashamed of. After she left, I finally checked my work email. There was a message from my boss, time-stamped 11 p.m. last night. Nathan, we need to talk before you return to the office. Call me ASAP. My stomach clenched. Marcus's threat about the Westridge audit flashed through my mind. Had he made good on his promise to destroy my career? With shaking hands, I dialed my boss's number. Nathan, Greg answered on the first ring. Thanks for calling. I've been following the news about your brother. I was going to explain on Monday. No explanation needed, he interrupted. I assumed you couldn't discuss an ongoing federal investigation. But I need to know. Is there any blowback we should prepare for? Any clients connected to your family's company? I exhaled slowly. Not that I'm aware of. The investigation is focused on local officials and the Turner Development Group. Good, good. There was a pause. The partners are impressed, Nathan. Standing up against corruption, even when it's family, that takes integrity. The kind of integrity our firm values. Relief washed over me. So my job isn't in jeopardy? Greg laughed. Quite the opposite. We want to discuss your future here when you're ready to return. The ethics committee is particularly impressed. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. For years, Marcus had convinced me that my career choices were insignificant compared to his empire building. Yet now, his empire was crumbling while my commitment to ethics was being recognized as valuable. I watched the FBI press conference online that afternoon. Agent Chen outlined the charges against Marcus and the 3 officials without mentioning my role. But as cameras panned across the gathered reporters, I spotted my mother in the back, her face partially hidden behind large sunglasses. My phone rang minutes after the conference ended. Mom. Nathan, she said when I answered, her voice thick with emotion. Why didn't you tell me what Marcus was doing? Would you have believed me over him? I asked quietly. Her silence was answer enough. They're saying he could face 20 years, she finally said. My son could spend 20 years in prison because of... She stopped abruptly. Because of me? I finished for her. Or because of his own actions? I don't know how to separate those things right now, she admitted. I just know my family is being torn apart. I'm still here, Mom. I'm still your family, too. Are you? Her voice hardened slightly. Because from where I'm standing, you chose strangers over your own blood. That's not fair. None of this is fair, she snapped. Your father is being questioned by the FBI. Your brother is in jail. Our family name is being dragged through the mud. And you? You're being called a hero by people who don't even know you. The bitterness in her voice struck me like a physical blow. I never wanted to hurt you, I said softly. But I couldn't let him continue breaking the law, hurting people, destroying protected land. There are other ways you could have handled it, she interrupted. Ways that didn't involve handcuffs and news cameras. I tried those ways. No one listened. After a long pause, she sighed. I need time, Nathan. This is all too much right now. I understand, I said, though the rejection stung. I'm here when you're ready to talk. The days that followed settled into a strange new normal. I returned to work, where colleagues regarded me with a mixture of curiosity and respect. The media interest gradually faded as other stories took precedence. Marcus remained in custody, denied bail due to flight risk. Apparently, investigators had discovered offshore accounts and a recently purchased property in a non-extradition country. Dad called occasionally, brief conversations that carefully avoided any mention of Marcus or the case. We were rebuilding something, slowly and cautiously, though neither of us was sure what shape it would eventually take. Mom didn't call at all. 3 weeks after the arrest, I received a letter with the county jail's return address. Marcus's handwriting. I stared at the envelope for a long time before finally opening it. Nathan, it began without preamble. I hope you're satisfied with what you've done. Dad's company is finished. Mom can barely leave the house from shame. Our family name means nothing now, thanks to you. No remorse, no acknowledgement of his crimes, just blame, as always. You think you've won, the letter continued, but this isn't over. When I get out, and I will get out, you'll understand what it really means to lose everything. You're nothing without the Turner name, and I'll make sure you never forget that. I folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope, surprisingly unmoved by his threats. The Marcus who had terrified me for years, who had made me feel worthless with a single dismissive glance, suddenly seemed small, diminished. A man whose power had always depended on others believing in it. That evening, I met Vanessa for dinner at a quiet restaurant outside town. I got a letter from Marcus today, I told her after we ordered. Full of threats and blame. She rolled her eyes. Typical. He's still trying to control the narrative from behind bars. The thing is, I said, it didn't bother me. For the first time, I read his words and felt nothing. No fear, no self-doubt, nothing. Vanessa smiled. That's called freedom, Nathan. You've finally stopped giving him power over how you see yourself. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe I've just realized that his opinion of me was never the measure of my worth. As we ate, Vanessa updated me on family gossip. Most relatives had taken a wait-and-see approach to the scandal, unwilling to openly condemn Marcus until the trial, but equally hesitant to support me for fear of alienating my parents. Except Uncle Henry, she added with a grin. He called Dad specifically to say he always thought Marcus was a smarmy little opportunist, and that you were the only Turner with any real backbone. I laughed, genuinely surprised. Uncle Henry said that? He barely speaks at family gatherings. Apparently he's been watching more closely than we realized. Vanessa took a sip of wine. Oh, and there's something else you should know. Turner Development's projects are being reviewed by a court-appointed auditor. The forest property has already been returned to protected status. A wave of satisfaction washed over me. So it wasn't for nothing. Not even close, Vanessa assured me. You saved that land, Nathan. Whatever else happens, that's something real and permanent. On my drive home, I took a detour past the forest site that had catalyzed everything. The construction equipment was gone. The preliminary clearing had stopped before causing permanent damage. In time, nature would reclaim the disturbed areas, erasing the brief human intrusion. I pulled over and got out of my car, standing at the edge of the woods as the setting sun filtered through the trees. For years, Marcus had called me insignificant, a waste of space who would never accomplish anything meaningful. Yet here was tangible proof of my impact. Acres of forest that would continue to exist because I had refused to stay silent. My phone buzzed with an incoming email. Agent Chen, asking if I could come to the office tomorrow to review some documents before the preliminary hearing. I replied immediately that I would be there. As I drove the rest of the way home, I realized something had fundamentally shifted in me. The brother who had spent a lifetime making me feel small had inadvertently revealed my true strength. By standing against corruption, even when it wore my family's face, I had finally discovered my own value, measured not by Marcus's standards but by my own moral compass. The waste of space had found his purpose, and it was bigger than Marcus could have ever imagined. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in early May. I arrived at the courthouse to find a small crowd of reporters still interested in the corruption case that had rocked our community. They called out questions as I walked up the steps, but I kept my eyes forward, focused on the heavy wooden doors ahead. Inside, the courtroom was nearly full. Local business owners, environmental activists, and curious citizens had come to witness the proceedings. I slipped into a seat near the back, hoping to remain as inconspicuous as possible. That hope vanished when Marcus was led in by deputies. Despite his handcuffs and orange jumpsuit, he carried himself with the same arrogance I'd known all my life. His eyes scanned the crowd until they locked on mine. The hatred in his gaze was palpable, even from across the room. I held his stare, refusing to look away first. It was a small thing, this silent battle of wills, but it felt significant. The old Nathan would have dropped his eyes, would have shrunk under that hostile glare. But I wasn't that person anymore. Marcus finally looked away when his attorney touched his arm, breaking the moment. I exhaled slowly, only then realizing I'd been holding my breath. A movement at the courtroom entrance caught my attention. My parents walked in together, my father's hand protectively at my mother's elbow. They hadn't told me they would be here. I watched as they took seats on the opposite side of the room, deliberately distancing themselves from me while still being visible to Marcus. The message was clear. They were here for him, not me. I had expected it, of course. But expectation didn't soften the blow. Even now, faced with the evidence of their son's crimes, they chose to stand with him. The proceedings began with the prosecution outlining the charges: multiple counts of bribery, wire fraud, conspiracy, environmental violations. The prosecutor, a sharp-featured woman named Deborah Hayes, presented a compelling case, detailing how Marcus had systematically corrupted local officials to circumvent regulations. And this was not victimless crime, she emphasized, gesturing to exhibits showing the environmental damage already done to the wetlands site. Mr. Turner knowingly endangered protected habitats and water resources for personal profit. Marcus's attorney argued for dismissal based on insufficient evidence and, quote, procedural irregularities. But the judge denied the motion. The case would proceed to trial. As the hearing concluded, I rose to leave, hoping to avoid both the media and my family. But as I reached the corridor, I heard my name, Nathan. I turned to find my father approaching, alone. My mother remained by the courtroom door, watching us with an unreadable expression. "You didn't tell us you would be here," Dad said. "You didn't tell me you would be either," I replied. He nodded, acknowledging the distance that had grown between us. "Your mother wanted to see him, to show support." "I understand." Dad glanced back at her, then lowered his voice. "The company is finished. The bank has called in our loans. Clients are canceling contracts. 30 years of work, gone." I wasn't sure how to respond. Should I apologize for the collapse of a business built partly on corruption? Should I offer sympathy for the consequences of actions I hadn't taken? "I'm sorry it ended this way," I finally said. It was the most honest response I could give. "Are you?" His eyes searched mine. "You could have come to me first, Nathan. Given me a chance to fix things internally." "Would you have?" I challenged. "Or would you have warned Marcus, helped him cover it up better?" He had no answer for that, which was an answer in itself. "I need to go," I said. "I have a meeting with the prosecutors this afternoon." Dad's expression hardened slightly. "You're still actively working against your brother." "I'm cooperating with a legitimate investigation into criminal activity," I corrected. "The fact that the criminal is my brother doesn't change what he did." As I walked away, I heard him call after me. "Family should come first, Nathan." "Always." I paused but didn't turn around. "Even when family is wrong?" He had no answer for that either. The meeting with prosecutors that afternoon was grueling. For 3 hours, they had me review documents, confirm timelines, and prepare for my eventual testimony. If the case went to trial, I would be a key witness against my own brother. Are you prepared for what that means? Hayes asked as our session concluded. Testifying against family is difficult under any circumstances, but this will be particularly public and contentious. I'm prepared, I assured her, though the weight of it all was beginning to press heavily on my shoulders. She studied me for a moment. Mr. Turner, may I speak frankly? I nodded. In cases like this, defendants often seek to discredit witnesses through personal attacks. Your brother's attorneys will likely try to paint you as jealous, vindictive, untrustworthy. They'll dig into your past, looking for anything they can use against you. I understand. Good, because there's something else you should know. She slid a folder across the table. Your brother has been making calls from jail to a private investigator. We believe he's building a counter-narrative, gathering ammunition against you. I opened the folder to find transcripts of jail calls, heavily redacted but still revealing Marcus's intentions. Find something, anything, we can use against him, he'd told the investigator. Everyone has secrets. Find Nathan's. We're monitoring the situation, Hayes assured me. But you should be prepared for potential fallout. I closed the folder, a cold certainty settling in my stomach. Marcus won't find anything, because there's nothing to find. My life is an open book, which is exactly why he's always thought I was boring. She smiled slightly. Sometimes boring people make the best witnesses. Over the next few weeks, Marcus's threatened counterattack materialized in small ways. Former college classmates called, asking strange questions about my past. A photographer followed me to and from work. Rumors began circulating at my firm that I had turned in my brother out of jealousy over the family business. I weathered it all with a growing sense of detachment. These tactics might have devastated me once, when I still craved family approval and feared Marcus's influence. But now they seemed desperate and small, the flailing of a man who had lost his power to intimidate me. The real blow came from an unexpected direction. One evening in late May, my mother appeared at my apartment door. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice softer than it had been during our last conversation. I stepped aside, letting her enter. She looked around my living room with curious eyes, as if seeing it for the first time. In a way, she had never visited before, always insisting family gatherings happen at the family home. "Would you like some tea?" I offered. She nodded, settling onto my couch while I prepared 2 cups. When I returned, she was holding a framed photo of me and Vanessa at her college graduation. "You two were always close," she observed. "She's been a good friend," I said, setting her tea on the coffee table. "One of the few family members who stayed in touch after everything." Mom set the photo down carefully. "That's partly why I'm here, Nathan. Family." She took a deep breath. "I spoke with Marcus's attorney yesterday. They're offering a plea deal." This was news. "What kind of deal?" "Reduced charges. Minimum security facility. Possibly just 5 years instead of 20. She leaned forward. "But there's a condition. You would need to recant your testimony. Say you misunderstood certain transactions. Admit you had personal reasons to damage your brother's reputation." I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. "You're asking me to lie under oath, to help a guilty man escape justice." "I'm asking you to help your brother," she corrected. "He's made mistakes, yes. But 20 years, Nathan? He'd be middle-aged by the time he got out. His life would be over. And what about the lives his corruption impacted? The environment's damaged? The public trust violated?" I set my cup down harder than intended. "Mom, he broke the law. Repeatedly and deliberately. He's still your brother." Her eyes filled with tears. "And I'm still your mother, asking you to show mercy." The naked emotional manipulation infuriated me. Mercy? Where was his mercy when he called me a waste of space? When he threatened my career? When he tried to destroy me for daring to stand up to him? "He's your blood, Nathan. Blood doesn't excuse corruption, it doesn't erase responsibility." I stood, unable to remain seated with the anger coursing through me. "I can't believe you came here to ask this." She rose as well, her expression hardening. I came here because I'm trying to save what's left of this family. Your father is being investigated, our reputation is ruined, and now you want to send your brother to prison for decades. I'm not sending him anywhere, I said firmly. His own actions are. Actions you exposed, she shot back. You could have handled this privately, kept it in the family. Instead, you went to strangers, aired our dirty laundry for everyone to see. Because it wasn't just dirty laundry, Mom. It was criminal activity that was harming our community. We stood facing each other, the gulf between us wider than the physical space separating us. In her eyes, I saw what I had always feared. I would never be the son she wanted. My moral compass, my independence, my refusal to prioritize family loyalty over ethical conduct, these were flaws in her view, not strengths. I can't help you, I said finally, my voice quieter. I won't lie to protect Marcus from the consequences of his actions. She gathered her purse, disappointment etched in every line of her face. Then I don't know what else to say to you. Neither do I. At the door, she paused. Your father and I are selling the house, moving to Arizona to be near my sister. We need a fresh start, away from the gossip and judgment. The news shouldn't have hurt, but it did. A fresh cut atop old wounds. The family home, with all its complicated memories, would belong to strangers. Another severance from my past. When? I asked. Next month. After Marcus's situation is resolved one way or another. She didn't meet my eyes. You should come by before we leave. There might be things of yours you want to keep. After she left, I sat alone in my apartment, the silence pressing in around me. The family I had grown up with was disintegrating, partly because of Marcus's crimes, partly because of my refusal to cover for him, and partly because of long-standing dysfunctions that had finally reached their breaking point. Yet alongside the grief was a strange sense of liberation. For years I had contorted myself to fit into a family dynamic that demanded compliance over integrity. Now standing firm in my principles had cost me that family, but gained me something more valuable: self-respect. The next morning I called Agent Chen. I need to talk to you about something, I said. My mother visited last night with an unusual request. Chen met me for coffee an hour later. I explained the proposed plea deal and my mother's pressure to support it. This isn't uncommon, Chen said after listening carefully. Family members often try to mediate, especially mothers. But what she's suggesting, having you recant testimony, could constitute witness tampering. I don't want to get her in trouble, I said quickly. She's just desperate to help Marcus. Chen nodded. I understand. But you should know that if your brother's attorney is floating this kind of deal, they're worried about the evidence against him. They know their case is weak. So what happens now? That's up to you, she said. But if I were in your position, I'd document the conversation and inform the prosecutor. This attempt to influence your testimony should be on record. I did as she suggested, calling Hayes that afternoon to report what had happened. She thanked me for my honesty and assured me the prosecution would proceed regardless of any pressure tactics. 2 days later, Marcus's attorney officially submitted a plea offer, one that didn't involve me recanting anything. Instead, he would plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for his cooperation in the ongoing investigation of other local officials. Hayes called to give me the news. He's looking at 7 years, minimum security, no trial necessary. He's actually admitting guilt? I couldn't hide my surprise. The evidence was too strong to fight, she explained. And without your cooperation in his counter-narrative, he had no viable defense strategy. After hanging up, I sat at my desk, staring out the window at the spring afternoon. 7 years. Not the 20 he might have faced, but still significant. Long enough to dismantle the life he had built, to fade from the community's memory, to force him to rebuild from nothing when he emerged. Just as he had always said I would have to do if I didn't have the Turner name to rely on. The irony wasn't lost on me. Now it was Marcus who would have to discover who he was without the trappings of success and family position. Marcus who would have to find value in himself beyond what he could take or manipulate from others. Part of me, A small, vindictive part one wasn't proud of, felt satisfaction at this reversal. But mostly, I felt a profound sadness for the relationship we might have had if competition and control hadn't poisoned it from childhood. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for early June. I attended, sitting near the back again, this time accompanied by Vanessa. My parents were in the front row, my mother clutching tissues, my father stoic in his best suit. Marcus looked different. Thinner, the arrogance in his posture diminished by months in county jail. When given the opportunity to speak before sentencing, he expressed what sounded like rehearsed remorse, talking about errors in judgment and, quote, learning hard lessons. Not once did he look in my direction. The judge was unmoved by his performance. Mr. Turner, you abused the public trust for personal gain. You corrupted officials sworn to protect our community's interests. You knowingly endangered protected environmental resources. These are not mere errors in judgment, but deliberate criminal acts. She sentenced him to the full 7 years outlined in the plea agreement, plus restitution to be determined. As Marcus was led away, my mother sobbed openly. My father put his arm around her, his own eyes suspiciously bright. I felt Vanessa's hand squeeze mine in silent support. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered around my parents, shouting questions about their son's sentence. I slipped away with Vanessa, avoiding the media circus. "Are you okay?" she asked as we walked to her car. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me feels like it's finally over. Another part knows some things will never be resolved." "Like what?" "Like why my brother hated me so much. Why my parents always took his side. Why our family couldn't just love each other without all the conditions and competition." Vanessa linked her arm through mine. "Those are questions for therapists and philosophers, Nathan, not courthouse steps." I laughed despite myself. "Fair enough. But I do wonder if I'll ever understand it." "Maybe you don't need to understand it," she suggested. "Maybe you just need to accept that it was, and now it's changing, and you get to decide what comes next." She was right. The past was written, but the future remained open. Marcus would serve his time. My parents would relocate to Arizona. The Turner Development Group would be liquidated to pay restitution. And I would continue building my life, a life defined not by my brother's shadow or my parents' expectations, but by my own choices and values. The following weekend, I visited my childhood home one last time. Moving boxes were stacked in every room, the familiar furnishings already appearing strange and disconnected from their usual places. My mother was cordial but distant, still hurt by my refusal to help Marcus. Dad was more engaged, walking me through the house, reminiscing about projects we had worked on together when I was young. "Remember rebuilding that back deck?" he asked as we stood in the yard. "You were 12, insisted on helping even though the boards were almost as big as you." I smiled at the memory. "You let me use the power drill." I felt so grown up. "You were always capable," he said, surprising me. "Even as a kid, determined to do things right." It was perhaps the closest he would ever come to acknowledging that my integrity had value, that the same quality that had led me to expose Marcus's crimes was something he had once admired in me. In the attic, I found boxes of my childhood possessions, report cards, sports trophies, science fair ribbons. Tangible proof of a life lived in this house, with this family, despite the complications and pain. "You should take what you want," Dad said from the attic stairs. "We're downsizing considerably." I selected a few meaningful items. My grandfather's pocket watch, photo albums from before the family dynamics soured, a wooden box I had made in shop class that Dad had proudly displayed in his office for years. As I was leaving, my mother appeared in the foyer. We stood awkwardly for a moment before she stepped forward and handed me an envelope. "I found this in Marcus's old desk," she said. "I think you should have it." Inside was a photograph I had never seen before. Marcus and me as very young children, perhaps 5 and 7, building a sandcastle together at the beach. We were laughing, genuinely happy in each other's company, no hint of the rivalry that would later define our relationship. "There was a time when you two were inseparable," Mom said softly. Before, everything changed. I studied the photo, searching for clues to what had gone wrong, when competition had replaced collaboration, when Marcus had decided I was someone to dominate rather than cherish. What happened? I asked. She shook her head slightly. I've been asking myself the same question. I don't have a good answer. It wasn't much, this small moment of shared reflection. Not forgiveness or reconciliation. But it was an acknowledgement that something precious had been lost long before the FBI had entered our lives. I tucked the photo into my pocket. Thank you for this. She nodded, keeping her distance. Take care of yourself, Nathan. You too, Mom. On my way out, Dad walked me to my car. Arizona isn't so far, he said. Maybe you could visit sometime. Maybe. I agreed, not committing but not refusing either. The future remained unwritten. As summer progressed, I settled into my new reality. At work, the ethics committee appointed me to help develop stronger compliance protocols. My friendship with Agent Chen evolved into a professional relationship that led to consulting opportunities, reviewing financial fraud cases. Most surprisingly, I found myself becoming an inadvertent spokesperson for corporate ethics. A local business journal interviewed me about my experience exposing corruption, which led to speaking engagements at the community college and business luncheons. You've turned being a whistleblower into a brand, Vanessa teased after one such event. Not a brand, I corrected. A purpose. Because that was what I had found through all of this. A purpose that aligned with my values, that utilized my skills, that allowed me to help others navigate the complicated terrain of ethical decision-making in difficult circumstances. 6 months after Marcus began serving his sentence, I received a letter from him. Unlike his first angry missive, this one was different in tone. Nathan, it began. I've had time to think in here, too much time probably. I still believe you betrayed the family by going to the FBI, but I've started to understand why you couldn't look the other way. That was never who you were, even as a kid. The straight arrow. The rule follower. The one who couldn't be corrupted. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even particularly warm. But it was an acknowledgement of my character, perhaps the first time Marcus had ever seen me clearly instead of through the lens of his own insecurities and ambitions. I don't know what happens when I get out, the letter continued. I don't know if we'll ever speak again, but I wanted you to know that I no longer see you as a waste of space. You're just occupying a different space than I ever understood. I read the letter several times, searching for manipulation or hidden agendas. But it seemed genuine. The beginning of reflection, if not redemption. I didn't write back immediately. I needed time to process this shift, to decide if engagement was healthy or if boundaries remained necessary. But I saved the letter, a tangible reminder that people can change, that perspectives can evolve, that even the deepest family wounds might someday begin to heal. 1 year to the day after Marcus's arrest, I visited the forest that had catalyzed everything. The conservation group that now managed the land had invited me to a ceremony marking its official designation as a protected wildlife sanctuary. Standing among environmental activists and community members, listening to speeches about preservation and stewardship, I felt a profound sense of peace. My family had been fractured, yes. Relationships had been damaged, perhaps irreparably, but something valuable had been saved. As I walked the newly established nature trail after the ceremony, I thought about Marcus's words from that fateful dinner. While you're counting beans in your cubicle, I'm creating legacies. He had been wrong about the counting beans part. My work had always been more meaningful than he acknowledged. But he had been right about legacies. They mattered. They endured. My legacy wouldn't be buildings with the Turner name emblazoned across them. It wouldn't be wealth or power or influence in the traditional sense. Instead, it would be this forest continuing to thrive. It would be the students I now mentored in business ethics. It would be the small daily choices to stand for integrity even when it was difficult. The waste of space had found where he belonged. And it was exactly where he was meant to be all along. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.